In 2025, the once friendly relationship between the United States and Canada took a dramatic turn. For decades, the world had looked to this border as a model of peaceful coexistence and cooperation, but beneath the surface, tensions had been simmering. Trade disputes, political differences, and shifting global alliances all played their part in setting the stage for conflict. Trade disagreements erupted into a diplomatic crisis, with the Alaska Highway, long a symbol of unity, becoming a flashpoint. This vital artery, connecting Alaska to the rest of the United States through Canada, suddenly found itself at the heart of a growing standoff. What was once a route for commerce and friendship now became a battleground for national interests. President Trump's return to America First policies reignited old tensions, prompting Canada to defend its sovereignty. His administration's tough rhetoric and new tariffs sent shockwaves across the border, forcing Canadian leaders to take a stand. The political climate grew colder, and both sides began to dig in, unwilling to back down. The highway, vital for Alaskan communities, now stood at the center of a dispute, threatening to isolate the state. Residents worried about supply shortages, and businesses braced for economic fallout. The sense of uncertainty grew with each passing day, as the once reliable flow of goods and people slowed to a crawl. Provincial and state leaders joined the fray, escalating the conflict beyond federal governments. Local officials, feeling the pressure from their constituents, demanded action and accountability. The dispute was no longer just a matter for diplomats, it was now a deeply personal issue for communities on both sides of the border. Canadian premiers, frustrated and determined, coordinated their own responses, signaling a rare unity. They held emergency meetings, crafted joint statements, and reached out to international allies for support. For the first time in years, Canada's provinces stood together, united by a common cause. The border, once open and cooperative, was now a stage for high-stakes political maneuvering. Security was tightened, inspections became more rigorous, and the atmosphere grew tense. Every decision made at the border carried weight, with the potential to escalate or defuse the crisis. What began as a trade spat was quickly morphing into a crisis with real consequences for millions. Families were separated, businesses faced uncertainty, and the daily lives of ordinary people were upended. The ripple effects of the feud spread far and wide, touching every corner of North America. The stage was set for a series of moves and countermoves that would test the limits of North American diplomacy. As leaders on both sides prepared for the next round of negotiations, the world watched closely, wondering if this cross-border feud would spiral out of control, or if cooler heads would ultimately prevail. In March 2025, President Trump announced a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. The move, aimed at forcing Ottawa's hand, was a shock to both nations' economies. Trump's administration argued it was about protecting American jobs, but the broad scope left little room for negotiation. Canadian leaders were blindsided, forced into a defensive posture as markets reeled. The tariffs threatened decades of economic integration, upending supply chains overnight. Businesses on both sides faced uncertainty and soaring costs. The White House saw this as leverage, others saw it as reckless brinkmanship. The hardline stance signaled a new era of confrontation, with economic stability hanging in the balance. The first shot had been fired, and the continent braced for retaliation. Canada's response was swift and resolute, a testament to the nation's determination to defend its interests and sovereignty in the face of mounting pressure. The government wasted no time in rallying its officials and the public, making it clear that Canada would not stand idly by. Prime Minister Trudeau announced a sweeping package of retaliatory tariffs targeting key American exports, signaling to the world that Canada would not be bullied by its southern neighbor. The announcement was met with applause from Parliament and support from across the political spectrum. Provincial leaders quickly joined in. British Columbia proposed heavy tolls on American trucks using the Alaska Highway, a vital artery for trade and travel between Alaska and the rest of the United States. The move was designed to hit American businesses where it hurt most, leveraging geography as a powerful bargaining chip. At the same time, grassroots campaigns sprang up across the country, urging Canadians to avoid American products. Targeted boycotts of U.S. brands gained momentum, with posters and social media campaigns encouraging consumers to buy Canadian and support local businesses. The Yukon government followed suit, restricting American business access and tightening regulations on cross-border commerce. Officials in the territory coordinated with federal authorities to ensure a unified front. Yukon also halted all imports of U.S. liquor, leaving shelves empty of familiar American brands. The message was clear: economic ties could be severed if necessary. Even Ontario, Canada's most populous province, took bold action by imposing surcharges on electricity exports to the US. This move directly impacted American consumers and businesses, raising costs and increasing pressure on US policymakers. This rare unity across Canada's political spectrum sent a clear and unmistakable message. Economic aggression would be met with coordinated nationwide resistance. Politicians from all parties stood together, putting aside differences for the sake of national interest. The Alaska Highway, once a symbol of partnership and cooperation between nations, was now transformed into a tool of leverage and negotiation. Canadian leaders aimed to create pressure within the US for a policy reversal, hoping that economic pain would spark public outcry and force American officials back to the negotiating table. The northern border was transforming into an economic fortress, with increased security, new barriers, and a sense of vigilance not seen in decades. The trade war was no longer just rhetoric, it was real, escalating and reshaping the relationship between two long-standing allies. The world watched as Canada stood firm, determined to defend its sovereignty at any cost. For Alaska, the threat to the highway was existential. While most cargo arrives by sea, the highway is the lifeline for perishable goods and critical supplies. New tolls would drive up costs, hitting families and businesses already burdened by high prices. The Alaska Trucking Association warned of devastating impacts, with some shipments becoming economically unviable. Governor Dunleavy called the tolls a direct tax on Alaskans, not just a business issue. The state's unique geography, reliant on a foreign land route, was now a vulnerability. Alaskans felt caught in a conflict not of their making, their economic future hanging in the balance. The highway, built for security, was now a symbol of isolation. The routine journey to the lower 48 had become a high-stakes political drama. As tensions between the United States and Canada reached a boiling point, the Trump administration made a bold move by fast-tracking the controversial Ambler Road project in Alaska. This decision was not just about infrastructure, it was a signal to the world that the U.S. was willing to take drastic steps to secure its own interests, even if it meant igniting further controversy. The proposed 211-mile industrial road would cut through pristine wilderness, opening up access to vast mineral reserves, previously locked away by environmental protections. By reversing a long-standing environmental block, the administration aimed to tap into critical resources like copper and zinc, metals essential for modern technology and national security. President Trump hailed the project as a major economic opportunity, promising jobs and growth for Alaska. Yet, the announcement immediately sparked fierce debate, dividing communities, politicians, and activists across the country. In a surprising twist, the U.S. government invested $35.6 million in Trilogy Metals, a Canadian mining company, securing a direct stake in the project. This cross-border investment blurred the lines between economic partnership and rivalry, raising eyebrows on both sides of the border. The investment sent shockwaves through financial markets, signaling that the U.S. was prepared to override both domestic and international opposition in pursuit of mineral independence. Investors and analysts scrambled to assess the long-term implications. While the project promised to boost U.S. self-sufficiency in critical minerals, it also threatened to disrupt fragile ecosystems and indigenous lands. Environmental groups and native communities voiced urgent concerns about the irreversible impact on their way of life. The executive order authorizing the road created unstoppable momentum, making it nearly impossible for future administrations to reverse course without significant political cost. Instead of calming the situation, the Ambler Road project became a new flashpoint, entangling economic nationalism, environmental stewardship, and indigenous rights in a complex and heated battle. From Ottawa's perspective, it was yet another unilateral American move, further straining already tense relations and fueling distrust between the two nations. The conflict had evolved beyond trade disputes. Now, it was a high-stakes struggle over the future of the North, its resources, its people, and its fragile environment. The Ambler Road revival sparked fierce resistance from Alaska's indigenous communities. 42 villages united, seeing the road as a threat to their culture and subsistence traditions. The route would cut through pristine wilderness, endangering the western Arctic caribou herd and vital hunting grounds. Tribal leaders warned of pollution and the destruction of a way of life sustained for generations. National and international environmental groups joined the fight, amplifying indigenous voices. The caribou's declining numbers became a rallying point, symbolizing the stakes. For many, the road was not progress, but a path to cultural and ecological ruin. The opposition vowed to use every tool to protect their ancestral lands. The Ambler Road controversy quickly crossed into Canada, raising alarms over the Yukon River. The river, vital to communities on both sides, faced threats from potential mining pollution. Canadian officials and First Nations warned of toxic runoff contaminating water and fish stocks. The project became an international issue, with Canada demanding a say in U.S. permitting. The interconnected northern ecosystem ignored borders, making cooperation essential. Environmental concerns gave Canada new leverage in the broader dispute. The Yukon River's fate became a symbol of the collateral damage of unilateral action. Canadian leaders framed their opposition as a stand for environmental and Indigenous rights. The border crisis was now about more than trade. It was about shared stewardship of the North. By early 2026, the US and Canada faced a crossroads: escalation or resolution. Further tit-for-tat measures risked a full-blown trade war and Alaska's isolation. Yet a diplomatic off-ramp remained possible. High-level negotiations could see Trump's tariffs withdrawn in exchange for Canada ending retaliatory measures. The Ambler Road's future might hinge on a joint environmental review, with Canadian participation to address cross-border concerns. Compromise would require trust, environmental safeguards, and Indigenous consultation. The outcome would shape the future of the world's longest undefended border. The choice: confrontation and division, or a return to partnership and shared prosperity. The coming months would decide whether the border remains a symbol of friendship or a line of conflict.